With the military's backing, every obstacle was cleared away overnight. The name Superman spread like wildfire across the internet and through the streets. People were desperate to know the truth. Was this Superman a comic book fantasy brought to life, or a secret government weapon? Some even swore he'd been around for decades, an alien who had finally revealed himself. The same debate hummed through an office building downtown. "Hey, Sean," a coworker asked, "what do you think? Who is Superman, really? I bet he goes to work like the rest of us, and of course he must wear glasses so nobody recognizes him." "Impossible in our company," Sean laughed, gathering his briefcase. "Anyway, I'm heading home. See you tomorrow." On his way out, he noticed a crowd at a street newsstand that was usually quiet. Curious, he pushed through and heard the vendor shout, "Sold out! Special issue's gone!" Special issue? Something big must have happened. Sean squeezed closer and saw the headline, "Superman, Homelander." People around him speculated. "Turns out Superman's the latest product from the military and the Austin Corporation," one man said. "I thought he was an alien." "No, he's called Homelander. The issue says his real name is Harry Osborn, the biological son of the Oscorp chairman. Who knows if it's true? They could be making it up. There are dozens of photos. Must be real." "And photos cost money," someone grumbled. Those without the magazine fidgeted, wanting it more and more. Sean had always dreamed, secretly, of being a comic book hero. If heroes were real, maybe he could be one too. When a few people began bidding to resell their copies, Sean joined in. He bought the issue for $120 and began devouring it. The paper was exactly as they'd said, page after page of Homelander. There was a clear head-on shot of him and a terrifying spread of him fighting a monstrous creature. The most striking photo showed Homelander's red eyes firing twin heat rays that left 2 charred marks in the pavement. Sean felt a thrill run through him. Incredible. Near the end, the magazine dropped a bombshell. Homelander's creation was allegedly part of a joint program by the Austin Corporation and the military. The project had reached its final stage, and the article claimed the serum that transforms Harry Osborn into Homelander was near mass production, meaning everyone might one day have a shot at becoming a Superman. Sean closed the paper and sighed. The idea was ludicrous, but he couldn't stop himself. He held the magazine up and called over the noise, "Anyone still want this? $200. The suggestion that anyone could become a Superman sounded ridiculous out loud. But the bigger effect was that reporters, like sharks sensing blood, flooded the Osborn building, desperate to uncover Homelander's identity. They fixated on the face on the cover and ignored that last paragraph about mass production. Austin Group, however, seemed to have expected precisely this frenzy. They had already arranged a press conference. After registering and confirming identities, the reporters were ushered into a spacious outdoor venue and seated. Announcements over the loudspeaker reminded everyone to stay calm, avoid crowding, and wait. The person you want to see will appear shortly. Natasha, invited to host the event, had a warm smile and a pleasant voice that gradually settled the packing crowd. Cameras clicked and lights swirled, but the audience's gaze was fixed on the man sitting in the first row. At least, that was where most of the whispers pointed. "Where did the Globe get those photos?" someone asked. "I heard Eddie Brock risked his life getting into the fight between Superman, Homelander, and the monster. He shot those pictures. With that, they can track him down." Brave or just reckless? Eddie heard the conversation and straightened in his seat. He couldn't hide the small, proud smile tugging at his mouth. The tired lines under his eyes looked more like trophies than exhaustion. He had stepped into danger, and people were noticing. A soft scent drifted past him. When he turned, a striking brown-haired woman had walked up and paused beside him. She smiled and asked, "Excuse me, anyone sitting here?" "No, I don't think so," Eddie said, a little breathless. "No one's taken it. Thanks." She sat down gracefully, her skirt smoothing over the seat. A fall of hair brushed Eddie's cheek, and the perfume made his head swim. He kept his composure, crossed his legs, and forced a casual shrug. The woman didn't leave it at politeness. She extended a hand. "I'm Liz Daniel." "Eddie Brock," he replied. "Oh, Eddie Brock," she said, bright-eyed. "You're famous. Your name has been everywhere." Liz folded her arms and looked at him with curiosity. "How do you always find the big stories?" Guess I have a nose for news. And you're not scared of dying? Eddie laughed. I'm scared of dying, like anyone. A friend once told me it's better to have a say in how you go. Is your friend a reporter too? She asked. No, Eddie said. He's a superhero. Liz's eyes sparkled. She leaned closer and brushed his thigh with her hand. A superhero? I'd love to hear more. Want to talk tonight? Ahem, Eddie croaked, blinking. Sure. They were talking when suddenly brilliant lights shot into the sky and everyone craned their necks up. Flashbulbs popped in a frantic chorus. Look, over there! That's him! A hush fell over the crowd as a figure hovered above the stage. With a measured breath, he descended and landed in the center of the platform. Green armor gleamed. A black cape billowed behind him. He looked even more striking in person than in the photos. Handsome and composed, Harry Osborn swept his gaze over the assembled journalists and onlookers. A small smile lifted one corner of his mouth. Yes, he said, with a quiet confidence that carried through the square. I am one of my country's own. Chapter 41. Tony's Shock. Wow. The underground workshop was a disaster zone. Bolts, sheet metal, and scrap strewn everywhere. In the middle of it all, a crude silver suit of armor buzzed and staggered through the air, its palm and boot thrusters coughing out flames to keep it aloft. It clipped the wrong angle, missed a course correction, and slammed into the far wall with a sound like furniture being thrown through drywall. The lab shook. Tony peeled off the battered helmet and staggered out, grinning and coughing. He was exhausted and exhilarated at once. Ha! Finally, my first suit works. I'll call it Mark 1. Sir, shall I assist with removal? Jarvis asked, calm as ever. Yes, Jarvis. Take it apart. Robotic arms whirred to life and began dismantling the suit. Tony wiped his face with the back of his hand and slumped down amid the debris. He looked over the disassembled plates and circuits, tugged at his beard, and started making a mental checklist. Air circulation needs work. Paint it. Silver's boring. Red and gold, classic. That'll do. The rest were cosmetic and engineering fixes he could handle quickly. He stretched, grabbed a cold drink from the mini-fridge, sat on the floor, and guzzled it down. Jarvis, he said between swallows, what else is going on in the world? Anything. Big. Internationally, the Eastern European state of Sokovia announced a government reorganization and demanded foreign forces withdraw. Those forces were subsequently wiped out in under a day. The incident has attracted attention, Jarvis replied. Tony waved a hand. International coups were a Tuesday to him. What about the U.S.? Anything in New York? Yes. Several major events. The most prominent, Harry Osborn, son of the Osborn Corporation chairman, publicly declared, on stage and in front of dozens of news outlets, that he is from his motherland. Tony spat his drink across the floor. What did you say? Show me the clip. Jarvis projected it onto the blank white of the lab wall. A heroic young man dropped dramatically from the sky onto a stage and faced the cameras. Yes, he told the crowd, plain and loud, I am from my motherland. A hair-raising chill crawled up Tony's neck. Something prickled, like someone had just nicked a part of his spotlight. He scowled. Who's this, Homelander? Get me everything on him. Jarvis hesitated for 2 seconds, then began layering folders and files on the projection, dense and fast. Tony started to get nervous. What are you doing? Sir, Homelander is currently the hottest topic in America. He is the first person to publicly declare superhuman abilities and has been embraced by tens of millions of people. Current estimates place his influence above yours. For a few long seconds, Tony just stared. He'd been in his garage working on a clanky prototype, and somebody else had stepped onto the stage and stolen the narrative. He couldn't let that happen. No, not acceptable. Jarvis, pull S.H.I.E.L.D.'s internal database. Extract everything on Homelander. All of it. Bring it here. Understood. Jarvis's voice was steady. Tony had pushed a bunch of upgrades into the system. Breaking into classified feeds was no longer a cryptographic epic. It would still take a little time. Tony thumbed through news sites on his phone while he waited. Homelander's profile grew clearer on the screen. Flight without equipment, enough strength to lift a truck like it was a suitcase, and eyes that could project intense heat. He snorted, looking over at the disassembled Mark 1 pieces. So he can fly and burn things with his eyes. Big whoop. I can do that with armor. The download completed with a soft chime. Sir, I have copied the S.H.I.E.L.D. files to your local drive. Their monitoring noticed the transfer, but could not attribute it to you. Fine, let them complain, Tony muttered. He opened the first folder. The first thing that played was grainy footage of a young man, Harry, the report said, wrestling with a massive figure in the middle of the city. The opponent's silhouette was broad enough to be the kingpin. Tony raised an eyebrow. Not impressive, except for the thing that made him pause. Where did this monster come from? He wondered aloud. He kept reading. The more files he consumed, the more his world tilted. Project Pegasus, Project Avengers, Project Tahiti. Fine, he knew some of those names. But then, the Cosmic Cube, the Man in the Mirror, the Headless Horseman, the Faceless Man, the Possessed Devil, the Red Ghost, the Slit-Mouthed Woman, Ghost Hotel, Horror Amusement Park. Tony blinked. Okay, that's a lot. He had always suspected there were layers to the world that the public never saw. He hadn't realized S.H.I.E.L.D.'s black folders read like a mythological crime index. And most of these threats, according to the files, had appeared in and around New York recently. Further down, he found files that hit close to home, notes on Puppet Billy, the criminal who had kidnapped him days earlier, and a dossier labeled Firebringer. Puppet Billy, the files said, hadn't stopped at one kidnapping. He'd been taking high-profile figures and using them for spectacle, making himself the most notorious villain in America. Tony grinned wolfishly. You want to play? I'll catch you. And then, Firebringer. Apparently there were multiple fire-bearers now, people who suddenly developed strange abilities, often with catastrophic results. The intelligence indicated the originator was someone named Cinderella, who could grant ordinary people extraordinary power at will. S.H.I.E.L.D. labeled her extremely dangerous for precisely that reason, someone who could elevate a normal person into a threat far beyond their training. Cinderella can just hand out powers? Tony said, incredulous. The implications ran cold through him. That's not chaos, it's an army. He scrolled through the dossiers, piecing it together. Populist superhumans like Homelander, random new powered individuals, mass hysteria, Puppet Billy's kidnappings, Cinderella's fire-bearers turning the everyday into the lethal. New, bizarre, supernatural entries in the files that even Tony's ego had to admit were overdue for serious new tech. What's my mission? He asked aloud, half to Jarvis and half to himself. Ride along with some team? Join S.H.I.E.L.D.? Sit back and wait for the cavalry? The answer came easy, because someone who builds suits to stand out doesn't like being second fiddle. He got to his feet. Nope, not joining someone else's parade. I'm going to finish the Mark wine. I'll take care of things my way, build my own team if I have to. Jarvis's tone was dry amusement. Very well, sir. Shall I prepare the workshop schedule? Get to work, Jarvis. We've got a lot of catching up to do. The lab hummed back into life. Pieces of armor lay on the floor. Blueprints glowed on the workbench. And outside the little universe of his unfinished suit, a new kind of chaos was stepping into the light. Tony felt the familiar, giddy tightness of a man who'd been handed a problem he could solve. He rubbed his hands together and smiled. All right, let's make something the world will remember. Chapter 42, Master Gong. Ah! A small Iron Man streaked across the night sky, its red hull trimmed with gold catching the moonlight. The plume of flame under its feet left a fiery trail, and anyone who saw it might have sworn it was a UFO. Inside the cumbersome suit, Tony felt like a kid with a new remote control toy, grinning like an idiot. After testing the flight controls and feeling how smooth the suit handled, he got bolder. How high could this thing go? Up he went. He climbed past 10,000 meters, punching through the troposphere into the stratosphere. The temperature plunged. The little thrusters in the soles of the suit iced over and shut down. The armor, deprived of power, began to stall and drop. Tony's grin vanished. For a moment, he was a very nervous man inside a very expensive tin can. As the suit fell, the heat of the high-altitude air and the friction quickly thawed the ice. The thrusters came back to life, hauling the Mark I back up. By the time he limped back to the villa, Tony's adventure had stopped feeling like play. Nope, he said, as he peeled out of the suit. Mark I's too heavy, need lighter materials, and I have to fix the freezing issue with the thrusters. He set to work on the new design, already thinking about a Mark II with better performance. He'd barely started when Jarvis's calm, mechanical voice cut through the lab. Sir, Miss Potts is on the line. Tony didn't look up from his welder. Take it, he said, spraying sparks. Tony, this is my last warning. Be at the office tomorrow, Pepper said the moment the call connected. What's broken that even Obadiah can't fix? Tony asked without missing a beat. Tony, the core of Stark Industries is you, not him. The situation's ugly. Our stock is sliding. I need you at headquarters to reassure everyone, employees, shareholders, everybody. Stock's down? Because of what? Tony stopped welding and thought for a second. Let me guess, Homelander. Yes, and the Austin Group has seen a surge because of him. The military's looking at Austin now. Without you, Stark's losing face. Tony tilted his head, then smirked. All right, I'll be there tomorrow, Pepper. Don't make this an excuse to skip out, she said. Of course not. He hung up and returned to the bench. The Mark II wouldn't build itself. The next morning, Pepper arrived at the villa. Jarvis opened the door with metallic courtesy. Welcome, Miss Potts. Good morning, Jarvis, she replied. Tony emerged from the underground lab looking like he'd slept in a suit of armor. Haggard, hair unkempt, dark circles under his eyes. Pepper sighed. You stayed up all night again, didn't you? No, slept for an hour. Tony yawned and headed upstairs. Shower. You wait here a bit. Where's Happy? Out getting breakfast, I think. Pepper took a seat on the sofa but couldn't settle. Since Tony had started holed up at the mansion, she'd been running the company, and the workload had doubled. She was doing the work of a CEO for a secretary's pay, and her patients had the look of something about to snap. If Tony didn't straighten up and start taking responsibility, she promised herself she'd demand a raise or walk. Happy returned with takeout, and Tony finally reappeared, looking more like the public face Stark Industries expected. They drove into the city together. The ride was quiet until they pulled up at the precinct of flashing cameras. Reporters had been tipped off. Journalists burst from the hedges with microphones. Mr. Stark, what do you make of Oscorp's superhuman serum? Can someone like Homelander really be mass-produced? Mr. Stark, Norman Osborn called you well-behaved, sensible, and corrective in an interview. Your response? Mr. Stark, is it true Stark Industries is declining and the future belongs to the Austin Group? Tony's patience thinned. He stopped, faced them, and said coldly, Stark Industries doesn't play that comparison game. We focus on moving forward. As for the Austin Group, no comment. I'm not familiar with them. With that, he turned away. Happy used his broad frame to shepherd the press back. The reporters exchanged triumphant looks. This was headline material, and then scuttled off to spin their angle. They loved a fight between titans. They loved having an exclusive more. Tony went straight to the conference room. Obadiah Stane was already there, standing as if he'd been about to embrace a long-lost friend. Tony, it's been too long, he said, arms open. Don't. Tony held up a hand and sat without reciprocating the theatrics. If you've got news, say it. Don't waste my time. Obadiah withdrew his arms, a little wounded, and took his seat opposite them. Pepper forced a smile. Sorry about the reporters. They're insufferable, Obadiah said, waving a hand. Always trying to stir trouble. He steepled his fingers, then his expression turned serious. But the Austin Group is moving fast. Tony, maybe we should consider stepping back. Step back? Tony laughed, sharp, incredulous. If anyone's stepping back, it should be them. Then what's the plan? Obadiah asked. We need something big to reassure the military and the markets. Like what? Tony asked. Obadiah smiled faintly. Simple. Take our latest weapons, show them off, give the military something they can't ignore. Where? Tony asked. Afghanistan. Tony's mouth twitched, half a smile, half a challenge. The gears behind those lips were already turning. Chapter 43. Iron Man Goes Out. From the flashes of the future Tony had seen, one image stuck with him, himself, attacked in a desert, forced to build his first armored suit in a crude cave, and then fighting Obadiah in the Ironmonger. Obadiah couldn't possibly have known how to build the Ironmonger. Tony never shared the suit's construction. So how had Obadiah managed it? In the conference room, Obadiah sat beaming. Tony glanced at him, suspicion sharpening into a thought he wouldn't share out loud. Obadiah, in the meantime, was all smiles and business. Tony, I'm counting on you this time. The military's been pushing us. How about scheduling it the day after tomorrow? Fine. Let me know when. Tony nodded indifferently and rose to leave. Is that everything? If so, I'll be going. Pepper moved faster than he expected, grabbing his arm and dragging him back toward the chairman's office, long unused, now piled with paperwork. Tony, these are yours. You can't dump them on me. Tony looked at the stack and shrugged. Honestly, Pepper, you could do this. Why don't you be chairman for a while? She stared at him, half laughing, half incredulous. What? No, Tony, that's not possible. I couldn't. Really? You're going to pass up the chance? He gave her a mock pout. Fine, I'll ask Happy to be chairman instead. No, Pepper snapped, flustered. I'm not handing it to Happy. It's not that I don't trust him. He's just not cut out for this. Tony spread his hands. Who said I had to choose just the two of you? If you don't want it, then Happy it is. Pepper inhaled twice to steady herself, still stunned. Stark Industries was one of the largest companies on Earth. Becoming chairman wasn't a small thing. Tony saw her reaction and smiled. Don't decide right now. Think it over. I'll tell you my choice when I get back. You can sign off on these in the meantime. As he walked for the door, Pepper's voice stopped him. Tony, what about you? If you're not staying at Stark, what are you going to do? He turned, flashed a roguish grin. What I always do. Do what I want. Then he was gone. Back at home, Tony set Jarvis to work. Monitor all communications and electronics tied to Obadiah Stane. If anything looks off, alert me immediately. Understood, sir, Jarvis replied. It didn't take long. Jarvis relayed a recorded conversation that made Tony's face darken. The evidence pointed to Obadiah. Confirmations, arrangements, the unmistakable undertone of betrayal. If the last kidnapping had been opportunistic, this one smelled like cold, calculated greed. The thought of it stung. Years of trust and loyalty felt squandered. You want to go that far? Don't blame me if I don't play nice, Tony growled, repeating a line he'd heard in the recording. He slammed his fist down, breathing through the rage, as if confronting the murderer of someone he loved. 2 days later, Colonel Rhodey waited at the airbase, checking his watch with growing irritation until he finally dialed. Tony, where are you? Do you have any idea how long I've been here? Rod, I thought you were still in the hospital messing with the nurses, Tony drawled. I'm not you. Rhodey rolled his eyes. I lost a lot of blood, that's all. I'll be back on my feet in a few days. But don't change the subject. Get here. We're cutting it close. You heard there was an issue with the private jet? Tony said. It's not great, so I decided to fly myself. Meet me at the exercise base. What? Rhodey's voice rose. That jet is for generals. It's got a bar, karaoke, and that enormous bed you like. You can't just... Yeah, I can. Tony sounded amused as he vaulted into the sky. And in minutes, the red and gold silhouette of Iron Man streaked across the Atlantic at over twice the speed of sound, heading toward the Middle East. Jarvis, he said, voice calm, lock their locations. Done, sir. Good, let's put on a show. Below, in a sand-choked cave, a band of armed men in white head wraps cleaned their weapons. They called themselves the 10 Commandments, the most feared terrorists in the area. And they'd struck a deal with Obadiah. Capture Tony Stark, get paid handsomely. Their leader, shrewd and ruthless, had different plans. He intended to keep Tony alive long enough to force him to build high-tech missiles, squeeze every bit of value out of him, then kill him, so he could demand even more money from Obadiah. They were counting on greed. They weren't counting on Iron Man. A streak of red-gold fire crashed into the entrance of their cave. Before the startled men could react, Tony's armor fired a barrage of small projectiles, releasing anesthetic gas that flooded the space. Those who tried to bolt were knocked down by precise, non-lethal blows from Tony's armored gauntlets. Others, desperately trying to cover their mouths and fire back, found themselves dropping as Tony's targeting systems picked them off with surgical accuracy. Confirmed hostile targets. Identified terrorists, Jarvis said. Good, Tony muttered. He launched a small missile into the heart of their stockpile. The resulting blaze rolled up in a single towering fireball that lit the cave like daylight. Even with reinforcements and heavy weapons, the terrorists were no match for Iron Man's mobility and firepower. Tony moved through the cave like a storm, suppressing and neutralizing threats. It took him barely 5 minutes to end the engagement. When the dust and smoke cleared, he walked over to a bald man slumped in a corner, head in his hands and waiting for the bullet he never got. With a single motion, Tony lifted his helmet, revealing his face. Hey, Dr. Ethan, Tony said, voice flat. Congratulations, you're free. Dr. Ethan had closed his eyes and waited for death when a voice cut through the cave. He looked up in surprise. The face that stepped into view was unmistakable. "Tony Stark?" he managed. Tony extended a hand and helped him to his feet. "Do you know me?" he asked. "We met in Switzerland a few years back." Dr. Ethan frowned, rubbed his temples, and peered at the armor with a cleaner, more careful gaze. "You do look familiar. I can't place it exactly." He blinked, then squinted as if trying to take in every detail of the suit. "It's beautiful, a perfect marriage of technology and art. Is this your latest work, Mr. Stark?" The compliment hit Tony straight in the pride, and he couldn't help smiling. "Thanks, but we'd better talk about this somewhere outside the cave, quietly." He shot Dr. Ethan a look. "Doctor, be quiet for now." "Okay." Dr. Ethan wiped grime from his glasses with the corner of his shirt and peered up at the armor. Tony moved closer and gathered him in a quick, efficient lift. He glanced down at the emblem on the suit, the Stark Industries logo faintly visible on a weapon holstered at the hip. The helmet closed, panels sliding and locking as the faceplate covered Tony's features. Then the thrusters under the boots ignited, and with a roar, the suit blasted them out of the cave, a trail of flame and exhaust marking their departure as they rocketed into the sky. Back at the military demonstration site, Rhodes was pacing and sweating under the pressure of dozens of expectant faces. He'd been the one to fly in early and coordinate the display, yet Tony was nowhere to be found. Taking out his phone, he dialed. "Tony, where are you? Everyone's waiting." "Sorry," came the curt reply. "An unexpected situation. I'm delayed. I'll be there soon. Don't try to stop me." Before Rhodes could press for more, a voice crackled over the headset from the radar room. "Warning, unidentified object approaching rapidly. Intercept." "Don't intercept," Rhodes snapped. "It's Tony Stark." There was a brief pause. "A plane that size doesn't match any aircraft we've tracked." Rhodes looked up, shading his eyes against the sun. From the horizon, a small black dot grew quickly larger. The next instant, a red and gold figure fell from the sky and dropped to one knee in a perfect cinematic landing. Men reached for their weapons reflexively, but Rhodes called them off and stepped forward. The helmet retracted. Tony's face appeared, grinning broadly. "Hey, Rhodey, looking well." "Tony," Rhodes said, exasperated and half relieved, "you're full of surprises." They let the sunset glow wash over the sand for a moment. Rhodes couldn't help a jab. "You probably didn't notice how worked up some of those officials were back there. You disappeared for ages." He gestured toward the now dispersing crowd. "What took you so long?" Tony's smile turned wry. "I was delayed. Besides, this," he said, tilting his head toward the armor, "isn't a demonstration for the Jericho missiles. Why show them a single missile when the suit can do this?" Rhodes laughed. "Don't get cocky, genius. You really think this is the first step of something epoch-making?" "It's a first step," Tony admitted. Then, more seriously, "I'm not giving the suit to the military." "Not the military," Rhodey repeated, a question and a warning in one. "No, I'm giving it to you," Tony said. He let the words hang. "I always thought the weapons I built would protect people. But seeing what happened, seeing my tech in the hands of those terrorists, it changed everything." Rhodey stiffened. Tony went on quietly. "They got hold of Stark hardware and used it to fight encirclement, to grow stronger. My weapons became knives in the hands of my enemies. I can't let that happen with this." Rhodey understood more than Tony said. He could see the weight behind the confession, the way the city had used what Tony made. "You don't want them to get another suit," he said. "Exactly." Tony touched Rhodey's shoulder. "You keep it safe. If anyone is going to hold this line, it's you." Rhodey nodded. He knew the military would find ways to reverse engineer any technology they could get their hands on, but he would make sure this suit never became an enemy weapon. "All right, I'll take care of it." Tony asked about Dr. Ethan. "You going back now?" "I have a few things to take care of. I'll leave Dr. Ethan with you. Settle him somewhere safe. If he wants to work at Stark Industries, tell him the door's open." "Will do." Rhodey watched Tony rise into the air and vanish against the darkening sky, then sighed. In New York, Obadiah Stane paced in his study, glancing at his phone every few seconds. He had arranged the weapons supply and tipped off the attackers to Tony's location. In his mind, the plan had already succeeded. He poured himself a glass of expensive red wine and allowed himself a brief, smug relaxation, until the shriek of sirens sliced through the house. His hand shook. The glass slipped, smashing against the floor. Red wine soaked the carpet like a crude, sudden stain of blood. By the time he looked up, the front door was being breached. Men in suits and uniforms streamed in, and Happy Hogan, Tony's old friend and bodyguard, walked up with the easy, steady gait of someone who'd been given explicit instructions and would not be deterred. "Tony asked me to tell you," Happy said simply, "that you can spend the rest of your life in prison without worry. He'll make sure your family is looked after." No, that's not. I'm innocent, Tony," Obadiah barked. His protests dissolved into the clatter of handcuffs and the murmur of officers as they read him his rights. No one listened to his denials. On the rooftop of Stark Tower, Tony stood with the city spread glittering beneath him, the wind cool against the suit's outer plating. He lifted a glass of wine to his lips and savored the quiet. "At least I saved Dr. Ethan," he said aloud to the night, more to himself than anyone else. He thought of the man in the cave who'd expected to die and now might have a future, if he wanted it. The future wasn't fixed. Who you became, what you did, that was all up to choices in the present. A chuckle escaped him. "Iron Man," he mused, tasting the name. "Yeah, Iron Man. I kind of like it." He looked out over the city again and let the suit's systems hum quietly under his skin, the quiet between storms. Chapter 45. All parties gather together. When Obadiah was dragged away in defeat, Dr. Kurt Connors, working late in the Osborne Building's laboratory, was at a turning point of his own. He had gone days without sleep or proper food, chasing away every tiny flaw that had dogged his animal trials until the formula was, by his reckoning, perfect. Tomorrow was the deadline for acceptance. The only thing left was volunteers. The lab was quiet. Everyone else had gone home. Connors stared at the incubator where the reagents waited, thinking of the near-perfect results he'd coaxed from the animals. Slowly he rose, walked over, opened the incubator, and took out one vial. The liquid inside was faintly pink, almost luminous. His breath quickened. He hesitated a moment, then made a decision. He uncapped the vial, attached a syringe, and plunged the needle into the crease of his forearm. The reagent raced into his veins. The old itch flared where the limb had once been broken. He watched in astonishment as flesh and bone knit visibly before his eyes. Within minutes, his arm was whole again. Tears pricked his eyes. "It worked," he whispered, incredulous. After so many years, he would be normal again. He was too ecstatic to notice at first that a small patch of scales had already sprouted along his elbow. When the adrenaline ebbed and he examined himself more carefully, the scales had spread, coarse, dense, unmistakable. This wasn't in the animal data. "The spread is too fast," Connors muttered. The reagent's lizard gene integration had been remarkably compatible with human DNA, almost no rejection, but the human side reaction was more pronounced than he'd hoped. He scanned the shelves for an inhibitor, something to excise or block the foreign fragments, but the lights in the lab went out. Only a few critical instruments stayed alive on emergency feed. In the sudden dark, Connor's voice cut through the silence in a raw, terrified shout. "No." 2 minutes earlier. After the day's work, Natasha had slipped into a hiding spot disguised as a secretary and waited until the building emptied. When night fell, she changed out of her business suit into black tactical gear, pressed the comm earpiece to her ear, and heard the quiet report from headquarters. "Natasha, Homelander's been located. He's at a military cocktail party and won't return to Osborne in the near term. Move now." "Copy," she answered. She'd spent days undercover mapping the Osborne complex. First, she had connected a stealth program to the company network, then seeded a Trojan into the monitoring suite so the security feeds would loop a pre-recorded hour, giving her a window to move without being seen. That plan had worked until someone else chose tonight to hit the building. The lights snapped out across the Osborne building, replaced by a thunderous boom. Natasha's pulse jumped when she tracked the source of the sound. "Chairman's office," she breathed. She killed the laptop, sprinted through the dark corridors, and keyed her comm. "Director, I need backup." Only static answered. The line went dead. She reached the chairman's outer door just before another explosion echoed from inside. Natasha kicked the door hard, rolling through the breach in one fluid motion. The office's floor-to-ceiling windows had been blown outward. A man in a torn suit and a mask stood by a destroyed safe, fishing a vial of green liquid from a busted canister with his metal arm. He slid it into a briefcase at his feet. Open on the leather were other identical vials. At the sight of him, Natasha's stomach dropped, memories flooded in. A long-ago wound along her side flared like an ache in a sleeping muscle. It's him, she thought. The man turned. The metal arm clicked. His expression was unreadable. Natasha recognized the voice in her head before the muzzle flash. Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. They drew in one swift motion. He favored a large-caliber shotgun. She had a compact pistol. The first blast shaved the air where she'd been a heartbeat earlier and perforated the wall behind her in a hail of splinters. Natasha's pupils narrowed. She rolled, low and fast, feeling the rush of hot air where the shot had been. If she'd been a fraction slower. She kept rolling, and as she slid, she produced 3 small discs from her belt. The Winter Soldier fired with one hand, the metal arm steady as a machine, his other hand clamped around the vial. He spun, calculated, and leapt back to avoid the first disc. The discs spat arcs of blue-white electricity. Even though he avoided direct hits, the metal of his arm glowed and spiked. A flicker traveled up its joints. That was all the opening Natasha needed. She bounded forward with 2 somersaults and launched herself at him, throwing her legs around his neck in a practiced, martially precise clamp. Momentum carried them to the floor. For a second, she had him pinned. He was not like the operatives she'd beaten before. He planted the metal arm into the floor and shoved with a force that cracked the tiles. The shockwave slammed her aside. Natasha rolled clear and produced a compact flashbang from her kit, hurling it at his feet. A blinding white light detonated, obliterating his vision. Bucky swung instinctively toward where the safe sat, fist connecting with the air as he fought the temporary blindness. Natasha dove for the briefcase, thumbed the lid, but he recovered faster than she expected. His metal fingers closed around the case, twisting it from her grasp. The two circled, breath fogging in the chill of the ruined office, each breathing down the barrel of the other's intent. Then the wall by the doorway exploded inward. A figure strode through the rubble in a white lab coat, towering and sinewy. His pupils were vertical slits set in warm brown eyes that flashed with a predator's focus and with an intelligence that made Natasha's skin crawl. He moved with a reptile's smooth efficiency, shoulders hunched just enough to seem inhuman. For a blink he surveyed the room, the broken glass, the shotgun, the briefcase, then the vials. "This is lively," he said, voice clipped but amused. "If you don't want to die, get out of my way. The superhuman serum is mine." Natasha stared at him, the scream from somewhere in the building still ringing in her ears, and realized that the night's plans had just become a 3-way clash for something far worse than corporate secrets. Chapter 46. The Strange Arrival. The banquet hall glittered with light. Celebrities and power players mingled, toasting, sipping wine, and trading pleasantries. Yet nearly everyone's attention kept drifting to the young man with the shy smile. Even Norman Osborn, chairman of Oscorp, who stood beside him, seemed to fade in comparison. The superhuman serum had done more than boost strength. Harry, already not short, now towered slightly taller. His profile was sculpted and severe. Among the older men, he looked almost carved from marble. "Norman, Harry, let me introduce you to these people," General Ross said, gesturing to the men around him. "They're pillars of our nation." Harry swallowed, then felt a small flush of pride that he could stand among them. Formal events were not his element, though. He fidgeted a little while his father maintained a composed, polite smile, only answering when called upon. Noticing Harry's awkwardness, General Ross grinned. "Ha! Don't stand around with a bunch of old men. Go, find people your own age. There are plenty of attractive women, too." Me?" Harry looked at his father. Norman gave him a brief nod. "Go on, and remember, be a gentleman." "I will." Harry excused himself from the older men and drifted off. Soon he was surrounded by admirers, laughing and blushing. Ross watched him go and said fondly, "Harry's a good boy." "He carries himself as if he were one of ours," Norman replied, raising his glass. He took a sip of wine and let his smile deepen with a private meaning. "Shield Hydra, Dr. Lizard, the Osborn building. It was all lively tonight, but no one had signaled me. The comms must be jammed. Fine, I won't get involved. Let them deal with him." He watched Harry from across the room, smiling despite himself, then turned away as the festivities continued. Meanwhile, in a shattered office far from the polished ballroom, the mood was very different. Natasha and the Winter Soldier faced the thing that had just crashed through the wall. Dr. Connors was gone. In his place stood the lizard, taller than a man, draped in dark green scales, claws flashing in the moonlight. Its declaration had been brutal and single-minded. Natasha knew immediately. This wasn't an opponent to be taken lightly. Of the three who wanted the superhuman serum, she was the weakest. She weighed her options and made a choice. Slowly, hands raised, she stepped back. "Fine, take the serum," she said. "But first you have to get past the ruthless Mr. Iron Hand." A low, contemptuous snort escaped the lizard. The creature had shed Connor's fear and restraint. Now it hungered to remake the world in its image, to create more of its kind and place lizardmen atop the food chain. The serum would accelerate that plan, and Norman Osborn and his people would have to be eliminated to prevent a cure or a second synthesis. The lizard took 2 heavy strides forward, big triangular head dipping as it assessed the man before it. Moonlight glinted along rows of teeth and elongated claws that extended from its fingers like blades. "You're not going to run?" it hissed. "Too frightened to move?" The Winter Soldier was a weapon turned human, stripped of doubt, of fear, focused only on the mission. He didn't hesitate. He drew a pistol and fired at the lizard while, at the same time, sidestepping to the safe. He scooped up the specially made wallet case that held the last 3 vials of the superhuman serum, snapped it shut, and started to fall back. The plan was simple. Get the serum out, get it to the extraction point waiting downstairs, and get out quickly. The longer they stayed, the more the mission risked failing. But he had misjudged the creature's resilience. His bullet struck scales and sparked uselessly. By the time the wallet clicked shut, the lizard was on him, fast and furious. Its claws struck the metal arm like twin hammers. A shriek of metal tore through the air as claw tore into arm, leaving 4 jagged gouges. The collision's force rolled the Winter Soldier backward across the room. He slammed off the broken French window and leaped, but the lizard's tail lashed around his ankle and yanked him back. The Winter Soldier's jaw tightened. He loosened his grip on the case and sent it spinning down the stairwell, a deliberate sacrifice. The case was armored to protect the vials. Someone would be waiting below to pick it up. Mission parameters assumed someone would meet him. He should be able to get away. Instead, the lizard hurled him hard enough to rip a hole through a wall. He hit the plaster and groaned. The lizard's voice cut through. "Damn you, how dare you!" Natasha seized the moment. She darted forward and snatched the 3 vials from the open safe before the lizard could turn. The creature's slit pupils flared red. Its tail slapped the floor like a lethal metronome. It could pounce at any second. Natasha expected to run. But before she could put distance between herself and the monster, the room itself shivered and changed. The table, the safe, the sofa, even the mural on the wall seemed to age in an instant. Fresh paint peeled away in shreds, revealing raw brick and crumbling mortar. Floor tiles dulled under layers of dust. The bright moon outside had gone red, painting everything in an iron-tinted light. The sky had turned a sickly dark yellow. The air filled with the dry, metallic tang of rust. Natasha's training told her this was no natural occurrence. No file in the SHIELD archives described anything like it. She realized, with a cold prickling at the back of her neck, that they were facing an anomaly she couldn't name. The lizard felt it too. Irritation gave way to something closer to dread, the instinctual fear of an animal faced with a larger predator. Beyond the remodeled doorway, a sound grew, heavy, deliberate footsteps and the scraping rasp of chains. Natasha braced for the worst. The lizard hunched, baring teeth. Even the Winter Soldier, badly injured, hauled himself up, fists curling into steel. A figure filled the doorway and the corridor beyond. Over 3 meters tall, it had the shape of a man but not the face. A triangular sheet of iron obscured its head, concealing any features. Its chest was bare and huge cords of muscle rolled under the skin. In its right hand it gripped a machete the length of a man. In the left, a spear as long. Heavy shackles clanged at its ankles, an iron chain trailing meters behind. Natasha drew in a slow, steady breath. Bang, bang, bang. While Natasha fought a brutal, close-quarters battle with the Winter Soldier and the Lizard Man inside the Osborn building, Another fierce firefight erupted on the street outside. One of the groups was S.H. Shield, led in person by director Nick Fury. The mission to recover the so-called Superman serum was critical. S.Shield had staked a lot on it. Natasha, their best field agent, had gone in to handle the most dangerous part, and Fury had stationed trusted operatives outside to provide support and prevent any catastrophe. So when a second unexpected force, men in black with unknown allegiances, struck, Fury swore under his breath. The attackers had brought helicopters and advanced weaponry, and they quickly pinned down most of the building's security. Fury didn't hesitate. Protecting Natasha and securing the serum was everything. He led his team into the fight. But the enemy had prepared well. Their gear outmatched the agents in several ways. The street turned into chaos. "Who the hell are these guys?" Coulson shouted over the gunfire. "Their kit is better than ours." "They're not the military," Fury replied. "The military isn't some single unit either, but whoever these are, they're not on our side." Fury glanced toward the building. If S.Shield lost the serum, or worse, lost Natasha, the mission would be a failure, no matter how many attackers they drove off. Time was slipping. Fury pulled a heavy, battered case from the trunk of a nearby car, entered a code, and snapped it open. Inside were components he assembled in seconds into a long, improvised weapon, a cannon more than a meter long. Coulson stared. "You brought that with you?" "For just this," Fury said. "Don't ask." He slung the cannon on his shoulder, barked for cover, picked his moment, raised the weapon, and fired. A blinding beam cut the street and slammed into the enemy position, erupting into a fireball. The recoil buckled Fury's shoulders. He tossed the disposable alien piece aside and roared, "Press the attack!" The agents surged. The firefight pushed both sides to the edge, but then something odd happened. A black leather wallet case fell from the sky and thudded open in the no man's land between them. The case split in half, its contents, a collection of small green vials, spilling and scattering across the pavement intact. "That's the superhuman serum?" Fury's voice went hard. He ordered his men to lay down suppressing fire and immediately drove forward, running the gauntlet to secure the fallen package. The enemy realized at the same instant what had dropped. They went berserk. Men stampeding, shouts, and a helicopter circled low, its winch lowering. Fury's men tried to hold the line, but the attackers grabbed a portion of the serum amid the confusion and pulled back under the cover of rotor wash. The helicopter lifted some of their people out and retreated. Fury called off the pursuit. He couldn't risk his remaining team chasing into a trap. He gathered the intact vials the agents had recovered, bundled the uninjured into a vehicle, and moved into the Osborne building. Strangely, the building was unnaturally quiet. No bodies, no attackers. Only signs the fight had raged. Blood spattered the carpet, scorch marks, scuffed walls, a toppled chair. Fury's jaw tightened. "Has Natasha reported in?" he asked. "Signal's back, but she hasn't responded," Coulson said. "Search in pairs," Fury ordered. 10 minutes. Whether you find anything or not, be back here to rendezvous." They split up. Fury and an agent swept to the monitoring room on the second floor. The corridor was so silent it felt wrong. The monitoring room itself was abandoned. Multiple screens dark, a coffee cup overturned on the table, a smear of coffee staining the floor. One coffee-damp footprint led to the doorway, and then stopped, as if the person had simply vanished. "What the hell happened in here?" Fury muttered. 10 minutes later, he returned to the rendezvous to find Coulson talking with police. The city had moved fast. Squad cars were already at the scene. "The NYPD finished a sweep," Coulson said. "Everyone in the building, gone. There was a brutal fight in the chairman's office on the top floor. Walls torn up. They found this." He handed Fury a photograph. Fury's brow drew together. The image showed shredded fabric and equipment. Among it were items unmistakably Natasha's. A broken strap, a cracked comms unit, a smudge of blood. "She fought someone here," Fury said quietly. "And then they both disappeared?" "This is looking less like a raid and more like something else," Coulson said. "We've got a witness, one of the security guards. He's been seen acting oddly. He was shaking when the patrol found him." "Bring him in," Fury said. "He might know something." They took the guard to a holding room. He sat huddled in a corner, knees drawn to his chest, eyes wide and unfocused. The man trembled when Fury and Coulson entered. "Owen, Coulson said gently, kneeling down to his level. You saw something. Tell us. We can help. The guard's lips trembled. It's not my business. He choked on the words. I didn't do it. I didn't. Fury sat across from him, voice low. Owen, whoever did this came through that building. Tell us what you know. Owen's hands started to claw at his scalp. He's invincible, he whispered, as if hearing the words could make it real. Everyone dies before him. Who's he? Fury demanded. They. Owen's voice broke. He's God, the God of punishment. He judges the guilty. He drags them down to hell. I don't know how, but he's real. Fury's expression hardened, but he kept his questions coming. Did you summon him? How did he get in? No, I didn't. I didn't bring him here. Owen's panic rose. He started digging at the palm of his right hand with his fingernails until his skin split and blood welled. Coulson grabbed his wrist to stop him, but Fury reached forward, pried his fingers open, and looked. In the center of Owen's palm was a triangular mark, reddened and raw. The blood seemed to pool into its grooves. Even as Owen bled, the triangular pattern darkened and glowed, the lines becoming unnervingly vivid. Fury's voice was low, almost clinical. Nobody's summoning anything, he said. Not on my watch. But the look he exchanged with Coulson said they had stumbled into something they didn't understand, and that whatever it was far from over. Chapter 48. Guess what? My company was attacked. Norman Osborn was still laughing and chatting at the party when a call from the police changed his face in an instant. He turned to General Ross, who stood at his side. General, the superhuman serum, it's been stolen. What? Ross's expression hardened immediately. Those serums were supposed to be under his control. Stolen? Unforgivable. I sent an elite unit to guard the Osborn building. How could they fail before reinforcements arrived? The attackers used signal jammers to cut communications from the Osborn building and came in with heavy firepower, the officer on the line reported. Norman swept his gaze across the banquet room and leaned in close to Ross. They picked a time when Harry and I weren't available. This was organized and premeditated. Ross's face tightened. The implication was clear and worrying. Then worse news came through. 13 researchers involved in the serum project, including lab director Dr. Strom, had disappeared. 3 others had been killed in the fighting. Ross looked unsettled. Norman shook his head. As long as I'm here, the serum can be reproduced, he said, trying to console him. But first you need to find who's hiding in the shadows. That was easier said than done. Ross had the uneasy feeling the attackers were stronger and smarter than anyone had realized. But his only option was to nod and begin the hunt. Through interviews, hypnosis, and scientific scans, Fury's team pieced together Owen's story. 2 nights earlier, while asleep, Owen had dreamed of a cloaked man carrying an oil lamp. The man called himself the Cinder King and claimed he was searching for a suitable bearer of fire. The Cinder King chose Owen and gave him the ability to summon something Owen described as the god of punishment. When Owen woke, he found a triangular symbol on his palm and realized his dream might be real. Then, during the assault on the lab, his colleagues suffered heavy casualties. In a desperate bid to survive, Owen used the power. The invaders and his colleagues had vanished without a trace. The trauma was compounded because every time he closed his eyes, he saw those people being killed by a triangular, iron-headed figure. Coulson summarized Owen's confession and looked up at Fury behind his desk. Director, it's the Cinder King again. Fury let out a long, tired sigh. The Cinder King had already caused New York endless trouble, and he was impossible to track down, let alone confront. Even if they found him, any direct conflict would mean huge casualties on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s side. Worse, they still didn't know the Cinder King's motives. He was a thorn in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s flank. Don't worry about him for the moment, Fury said. The most urgent thing is to find out whether Natasha is still alive. You hesitated while I was reading the transcript, Fury added, looking at Coulson. Tell me what you're thinking. Coulson took a breath. I think it's very likely the missing people aren't dead. I think they were shifted to another dimension or world. The visions Owen had aren't hallucinations. He's seeing something that's actually happening. Fury said nothing, so Coulson continued. Even if the creature Owen summons is powerful, it would be hard to slaughter an entire building in a few minutes. The scene showed only bullet traces, no monstrous damage. And with someone like Natasha, even if she'd been captured, she would have left some clue. There's nothing. To me, the simplest explanation is that they were suddenly transported somewhere else. Fury nodded slowly. Coulson, that's a sharp read. Those details bothered me too. Natasha wouldn't be gone that easily. So we go rescue her? Coulson asked. Of course, Fury said. He glanced at the 5 vials of superhuman serum lined up on the table, and his voice grew darker. But first, he tapped the vials, we have to make ourselves stronger. Black. Endless black. Matt Murdock thought he'd grown used to darkness, but when it wrapped around him, he felt a bone-deep loneliness, like he was the only person left in the world. Matt? A voice echoed from somewhere distant. His eyelids shifted, but would not open. He let the sound shape itself into a familiar figure at the foot of the bed. Coulson? He mumbled. It's me. Phil Coulson stood over him, smiling despite the worry in his eyes. Matt was wrapped in gauze, his lower body crushed in the collapse that followed the fight with Kingpin. He'd been knocked unconscious, and though the worst of the damage was limited to his legs, multiple fractures and severe trauma, S.H.I.E.L.D. had rushed him to their facility and kept him under treatment. Over the past days, he had come to know Coulson and learned something of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s responsibilities. I knocked, but you didn't answer, Coulson said. I worried and came in. Sorry, Matt said. I fell asleep. It's boring. You have something to ask me. Matt's tone was more statement than question. Coulson nodded. Yes, we need your help. Me? I'm stuck in bed, half broken. If you agree, we can get you back on your feet and make you stronger. Coulson produced a small vial filled with a green liquid from his pocket. This is the superhuman serum. In tests, it accelerates cell regeneration and speeds wound healing. Most importantly, it can turn a person into a superhuman. Turn me into a superhuman, Matt snorted. So this is the kind of favor you're asking. It's dangerous. Coulson didn't sugarcoat it. There are a lot of people trapped. Whether you come or not, we have to go rescue them. But with you, your skills, your senses, what you've already done, the odds of success go way up. Matt considered the vial in Coulson's hand and the weight of the responsibility. He thought of the missing scientists, the people forced through whatever dark door Owen had opened, and of Natasha. After a long moment, he nodded. If it's about saving people, I'll help. Chapter 49, Escape. The scream lingered in the air, a raw, ragged sound that finally faded into silence. Coulson hurried forward, cutting the ropes that had bound Matt. He asked, voice full of concern, Matt, are you all right? Matt opened his eyes. His vision was still shadowy and unfocused, but he could feel it. Every bone that had been crushed had somehow knitted back together. He sighed, flexed his fingers, and felt strength surge through him. If this was how he was now, he might be able to stand against Kingpin and save those who had died. He pushed himself up from the cot and took 2 tentative steps. There was no pain. The injection of the superhuman serum had done its work. Even his wounded foot had healed. You're recovered, Coulson said. Once we've checked him over, he needs to get used to that strength fast. We don't have much time. Understood, Matt managed. Coulson gave quick orders to the nearby researchers, then stepped out with Fury. Fury led him back to his office, where 2 people were already waiting. Maria Hill, short-haired, calm S.H.I.E.L.D.'s commander and Fury's steady right hand, and Melinda May, tall and composed, nicknamed the Iron Knight, Coulson's trusted field agent. Fury trusted both of them implicitly. I brought you in because of this, Fury said, producing 3 vials of the superhuman serum. Daredevil himself verified this stuff. It works. You 2 are the people I trust most. I'm offering you a shot. Whether you take it is your choice. Coulson flatly shook his head. No, I don't want to change into something I'm not. Hill opened her mouth to refuse as well. Director, I'm not usually on the front line. The serum won't help me. Fury waved a hand. I'll decide for myself, and S.H.I.E.L.D. needs people who can stand up to what might come. Hill, that's not a good excuse. Don't refuse me. Reluctantly, Hill nodded. Fury turned to May. Melinda, what about you? I'm willing, she said quietly. Good. Fury glanced at Coulson. Then Coulson, you sit this one out. The 2 of them will be injected right away. If it takes, they join the rescue team for Natasha immediately. Yes, Coulson replied. Somewhere in the building, in a corridor swallowed by thick fog, Natasha ran on raw instinct. Her breath came ragged and loud. She kept glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting whatever hunted her to appear at any moment, and it almost always did. From the darkness behind came the dragging clank of heavy chains and the thud of enormous footsteps. She had seen what happened to those who tried to fight. A lizard-like creature had been split in two by a triangular iron-headed figure. The Winter Soldier had been impaled through the chest by a spear and pinned to the floor. Natasha had abandoned fighting. Now she ran, a desperate, tireless flight, trying to stay out of reach of the triangle-headed man who seemed to stalk the halls like a nightmare. The fog made the building labyrinthine. No matter which way she turned, she kept ending up back where she started. She had met other people in security uniforms, Osborne building guards probably, but they hadn't lasted. Each chase ended the same way. The triangle-headed man would find them and leave only ash. A spear hissed through the air, its point grazing her thigh with a searing pain. Natasha dropped to the side, clutching the wound. Blood leaked through her fingers, but she forced herself to move. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. She darted into a doorway, the women's restroom, hoping to draw her pursuer there. The triangle-headed man walked up to the spear, pulled it free, then noticed the trail of blood leading into that door. He stomped toward it, heavy and inevitable. Natasha pressed herself against the opposite stall door and held her breath. The footsteps faded. For a moment, relief washed through her. She had tricked it. There was still hope, but not much. Her thigh hurt, and she couldn't run forever. If she was going to die, she wanted to leave something for whoever came after her. She pulled a lipstick from her pocket and thought about writing a message on the wall. But then something caught her eye. Faint scrawling was already covering the tiles next to her. She fumbled for her phone, switched on the flashlight, and shone it over the graffiti. Her pupils narrowed. The handwriting, packed, cramped, unnervingly familiar, made her fingers tremble. With shaking hands, she drew a few hurried strokes onto the wall with the lipstick. The next instant, a great blade, a machete, slammed through the toilet stall door and drove into her chest. Natasha let out a choked scream, a hot fountain of blood spilling over her lips. Her eyes dulled, the world slipping away. Within seconds, her body began to disintegrate, turning to ash that the air took and scattered. Then, as if someone had hit reset, the filthy walls, the blood, the rusted doors, all slid back into their original, cleaner states. Figures materialized throughout the building. The only thing that did not change was the fog that clung to the exterior like a living thing. On the top floor, in the chairman's office, Natasha suddenly opened her eyes. She found herself watching, as if from a distance, Dr. Lizard and the Winter Soldier opposing one another. They were fighting in front of her, same as before, but everything felt slightly off. She reached to clutch her chest and found an emptiness there, a hollowness like something important had been taken. A voice drifted to her, casual and taunting. "Hey, human, why don't you run away?" Dr. Lizard stepped close to the Winter Soldier and they renewed their fight. Natasha frowned. "Hey, stop fighting," she said before she could stop herself. "Why? You want to stop me again?" Dr. Lizard replied. She froze at the word again. Why had she said it? Dr. Lizard looked puzzled too, and in that moment the room felt more wrong than ever. Chapter 50. Another World. Are you ready? More than a dozen fully armed agents stood in neat formation before Fury. Among them were Hill and May and Matt, Daredevil, who'd been given the superhuman serum. 10 elite operatives completed the squad. Matt wore a matte black suit of special material, the hood pulled low so only his nose and mouth were exposed. His ears were uncovered so his hearing wouldn't be compromised. 2 short batons hung at his waist, and several tactical pockets held small tools, enough for any contingency. Hill, at the front, took a breath and answered Fury's question. "We're ready. 13 operatives total, all equipment checked." "Good." Fury steepled his fingers behind his back and narrowed his eye into a hard slit. A cold light flashed in it. "This mission isn't like the rest. We're not going after a human. We're going after a damn monster. But no matter how terrifying it is, it's no match for S.H.I.E.L.D. and a team of our people. This is the first time we're striking first against something like this. I don't want to fail. Rescue Black Widow and kill the monster. Can you do it?" "Yes," they answered in unison. Only Matt hesitated a fraction. He had felt the unease in Fury's voice and couldn't help it. He was new to this team, acting on orders with limited context. Good, Fury said. Hill, you'll command the operation. Everything's on you. Understood. Fury nodded to Coulson, standing behind him and prepared to move out. For safety, everyone in the base had been evacuated before they left. Once Hill and the team reached Owen's containment cell, the plan was to use mental stimulation to make him activate his ability, summon what Coulson, jokingly and half-seriously, called the God of Punishment. If Coulson's theory held, that would pull them into another world and lead them to Natasha. None of them expected what happened next. From the cell, Owen lifted his head. His eyes seemed dull. Slowly, he raised his right hand. The triangular mark on his palm flared with a strange light, a power that rippled outward and engulfed the entire shield base in an instant. Fury took 2 steps forward and watched in growing alarm as things around him decayed. Walls grew thick with moss, like decades of neglect in a heartbeat. Bright lights shifted to a sickly orange and began to sputter. The corridor ahead blackened, the end a yawning void. Fury spun. Coulson and the 13 agents who had been at his back were gone. In their place was a dim, broken corridor. He understood then where that cold unease had come from. Owen's mind was brittle. He might already have been twisted by whatever influence had corrupted him. If Coulson was right, the missing people weren't dead. They'd been transported somewhere else. If they didn't regroup quickly, the creatures that prowled this place could pick them off one by one. A shadow flickered in the darkness ahead. Fury drew his pistol and moved forward, every sense taut. When the thing shifted again, he fired without hesitation. There was a thud as it hit the floor. Fury approached cautiously. Lying on the ground was a security guard in an Austin Corporation uniform, wide-eyed, terrified. A bullet wound marred his forehead. Fury felt a stab of guilt and checked for a pulse. The guard was breathing shallowly. He lived. "Hey," Fury murmured. "Who are you? What happened?" The man couldn't answer. He simply stared, shaking. Fury's relief was complicated. The presence of an Austin security guard here proved Coulson's theory. People were being transferred, pulled into another world, not slaughtered outright. The disappearance of Coulson's team and the deterioration of the base were effects of that same power. For the moment, Fury had to find Hill and the others and bring them back together. No matter how alien this place, coordination was their best chance. He waited a few minutes to see if the wounded guard changed, but nothing supernatural happened. He left the man and began to explore the warped corridor, nerves on edge. Elsewhere in that distorted place, Matt moved alone. He was probably the first to notice how the environment had shifted. Time seemed to have been warped. A metallic, rusty tang hung in the air that made his head swim. He stopped. Heavy footfalls were coming from not far off, closing in fast. Calmly, Matt drew the 2 hanbo from his waist and clicked them together into a single 1-meter staff. He slipped into stance and listened. His heightened senses painted an outline in his mind. Over 2 meters tall, medium build, a long tail flicking behind it. It's a monster. Matt didn't hesitate. He launched himself forward, silent, precise, and struck at the creature. The baton slammed home. The creature, a lizard-like humanoid, Dr. Lizard, met the blow, clutching the staff in its claws. It fixed Matt with cold eyes and snarled, human words grating from its throat. "You humans start trouble." There was something different about this opponent, less animal, more cunning, and it hesitated. But the feral hunger in its blood took over. It lashed its tail like an iron whip. Matt anticipated it, stepped aside, and separated the staff. He smashed a short baton into the creature's face and reclaimed the other from its grip. The pair of sticks flashed, a blur that kept the lizardman on the defensive. The creature staggered, then recovered, fury burning in its gaze. It abandoned its caution and attacked with everything it had, claws slashing, jaws snapping. One swipe shredded Matt's chest piece down the middle, tearing the uniform into strips. Thin skin showed beneath, blood seeping through. The lizardman's wounds knit back alarmingly fast. Scales regenerated in seconds, torn flesh sealed. Its rapid recovery made any trade of blows a losing proposition for a human. Matt took the hits because he had no choice. He had to stop the creature before it could alarm others. But each strike came at a cost. He backed off, breathing through the pain, recalibrating his approach. This opponent's healing factor made the fight different from any shield checklist. It shouldn't have been enough to draw the whole agency's attention on its own. The lizard man was dangerous, but not exceptional. Had he attacked the wrong target? Had this place already been seeded with monsters far more powerful than this one? As the creature lunged again, Matt steeled himself. He couldn't afford to find out the answer now. Chapter 51. Strange Behavior. In the dim corridor, the chase continued. Monsters pursued, and Natasha ran. If one of them caught her, she would die. She couldn't understand why the triangular, iron-headed creature seemed intent on following her alone, ignoring the hulking, lizard-like thing and the obvious threat of the Winter Soldier, fixing its attention on the weakest target as if determined to hunt her to the ends of the earth. A sharp sound cut through the air, and Natasha rolled instinctively to the side. A spear of metal sliced past her hair and slammed into the floor, embedding itself without doing any real damage. She glanced back, exhaled, and realized her reflexes were already adapting faster than her fear. She pushed off and sprinted forward. The corridor shifted again. The hall narrowed, and the logo on the wall changed, from the familiar Austin Corporation emblem to the shield sigil she knew all too well. Natasha's heart gave a small, cautious hope. Had S.H.I.E.L.D. come for her? She felt a flicker of surprise and gratitude, immediately swamped by worry. Somewhere nearby, a voice warned, "Chief, you shouldn't be so reckless. You don't know how terrifying the monsters here are." Natasha kept moving, eyes bright with the thin, stubborn thread of survival. Elsewhere in the maze, Nick Fury was fighting the same fight. He, too, was being hunted by a group of humanoid things dressed in security uniforms and tactical black, but with faces an unnatural dark blue and limbs bent at impossible angles. They moved in jerky, insect-like ways. Fury had taken to calling them oddballs. Fury had emptied a magazine and discovered to his dismay that bullets barely stopped them. He began to run. Perhaps it was age, or the complacency that sometimes comes with the title of director, but his breathing grew noisy and ragged. He felt like a bellows. The oddballs caught him. One, moving on all fours like a grotesque spider, launched itself at Fury's back and knocked him down. Fury grabbed its head and hurled it aside, but more of them swarmed him, punching, kicking, wrenching at his limbs as though trying to twist him into their malformed shape. Then, with a thunderous crack, an invisible shockwave burst from deep inside the building and swept outward. The oddballs were blown back, many of them flattened against the walls like discarded pieces of paper. Fury, spitting blood from his nose and mouth, realized a hand had torn his eye patch away in the scuffle, revealing 3 stark scars across his face. His clothes hung in tatters. He looked every bit the battered veteran. They rose again, head tilting and twitching, and Fury, breathing hard, backed into a room and braced himself to continue the fight. Regret pricked him, regret that he had been careless about the super soldier serum and its consequences. The oddballs surged forward once more, indifferent to the identity of the man in front of them. At that moment, streaks of light hammered through the darkness. Bullets hammered into the leaping creatures with surgical precision, scattering them and giving Fury the opening he needed. A figure with a familiar face fired from cover. Fury ducked low and moved toward the shooter. If they wanted to survive, they'd have to work together. He found 2 reinforcements. One was Agent Coulson. The other was a man with rumpled hair and a metal arm. In the crush of bodies, the metal-armed man punched one monster clean out of the air. A 5-pointed star was stamped on the metal. Fury's eyes narrowed. "Director," Coulson called as soon as he saw him. "This way. These things don't go down easy. We need to pull back." Fury grabbed the pistol Coulson tossed him and fought his way to the pair. Together they retreated, weaving through halls and taking turns until they shoved furniture, tables, benches, bookshelves against a door, and the pounding on the other side finally eased. They breathed shallow, collective breaths and took stock. Fury looked at the stranger with the metal arm. The man's voice was flat and clipped when he answered Fury's question. "Sergeant James Buchanan Barnes, Howling Commandos." The man gave a tiny, almost involuntary twitch at the corner of his mouth. "You can call me Bucky." Fury's expression hardened. According to the files, Sergeant Barnes fell off a cliff and died a long time ago. Coulson made a small, confirming nod. "We know." Bucky's face went sour with a shadow of something like pain. "I don't remember. I remember falling from a train. Then I woke up here. Later, I ran into Coulson. Where were you all these years? Fury demanded. What did you do? Why do you look like you haven't aged a day? Bucky glanced at his metal arm and fell silent. When Fury pressed, Bucky shook his head. I don't remember how this came to be. The details aren't there. Coulson stepped in, reading the confusion on Bucky's face and trying to steer them back to the immediate problem. Right now, he's not an enemy. The priority is to find people and get out of here. Fury agreed. He told them what he'd seen when he'd first been pulled into this alien place. Security guards he'd known from the Osborn building suddenly turned monstrous. Coulson filled the rest in. The Osborn building and S.H.I.E.L.D. had somehow merged together. Two worlds overlapped, and people from one had become the walking nightmares in the other. That could mean Natasha is here, Fury said. Bucky's face brightened at the name. Natasha? The long brown-haired woman? Yes, Fury said. She might have been one of the missing. We need to move fast, Coulson said. If she's here, she's probably being hunted by something powerful right now. Bucky's expression hardened into that familiar, soldierly focus. Then let's go find her. They gathered their weapons and moved out, the realization that more of their team could still be alive, threading a thin, urgent hope through the battered group. The chase had spread through two worlds, and someone, somewhere, was still fighting to be found. Chapter 52, Evil Thoughts. Natasha was in ruins. She had pushed herself as far as she could, but no matter how fast she ran, the footsteps behind her were inexorable, a death march clinging to her like a parasite on bone. She was trained, disciplined, ordinary. She couldn't keep sprinting forever. The S.H.I.E.L.D. facility had become a maze of wrecked corridors and unfamiliar turns. Every step felt like one more loop in a trap. Eventually, she staggered to a stop, gasping, and leaned against a cold wall, sweat stinging her eyes. There was a bathroom nearby. For some reason, the sight of it tugged at her like a half-remembered warning. She went inside, closing the door behind her. The stink hit her at once, so strong it made her eyes water, but she forced herself to step into the dim. Her pupils adjusted quickly. She noticed, by the stall next to the door, a smudge of writing on the cinder block. She fumbled for her phone, turned on the light, and aimed it at the scrawl. Her heart froze. Director, the triangle-headed man does not fear gunfire and possesses incredible strength. Be careful. Why are my words on the wall? Is someone copying me? No, what I wrote was the information I wanted to leave behind. Have I been here before? True or false? Be careful of the door. The handwriting was hers, messy, hurried, unmistakable. It read like a transcript of her own thoughts, as if someone had written down her reactions in advance, or as if she had. The possibility that this was her own writing from some previous loop hit her like cold water. How could that be? Footsteps sounded in the corridor, close and deliberate. Natasha darted into a stall and crouched, heart hammering. Then the outer stall door exploded inward, a single, brutal stroke. If she hadn't ducked in time, the machete would have found her throat. The triangle-headed man had caught up with her. He stood in the doorway, the bloody machete in his grip, the hallway light framing his blocky silhouette through the bathroom fog. It felt inevitable. She was going to die here, again. A fog of recognition passed through her, the notion that she had died before, and that each death erased the memory that preceded it, pressed against her brain. She wanted to hold on to that thought, to save it. She could not. She pulled a short knife from her boot and lunged anyway, everything in her screaming not to go quietly. The machete came down. A long baton, a club broad and heavy, slammed into the triangle-headed man's hand, but it did not make him falter. The machete bit through Natasha's blade and then through her face. Her eyes remained open. They were steady a moment, then the light left them. Her whole body slackened as if someone had blown out a candle. No, came a roar from the doorway. Matt burst in at the last second, sliding across the ruined tiles, but it was too late. He dropped to his knees beside her, fingers fumbling for a pulse that wasn't there. Rage and grief tore through him, raw and immediate. Why? He had trained, he had fought, he had even spurred himself harder than before, and still he couldn't save her. Why was he always pushed into the role of witness, never savior? Somewhere deep in his head, a voice hissed, "Because you were too kind. You hesitated when it mattered. That weakness killed her. Sever your softness. Accept the darkness inside you. Only then will you have the strength to end monsters. The voice found every cracked place Matt kept in himself. For years, his father's teachings, his vows as a vigilante, and the priest's quiet mercy had kept him from killing, kept him constrained. Now those restraints felt like a noose. The failure to act, the image of Natasha dying in his arms, it became tinder to the thought that killing this thing was justified, even sanctified. He inhaled, vision narrowing to a single capital R, kill. The triangle-headed man pivoted, raising the machete. Matt gripped his staff, heart pounding. He couldn't be indecisive again. The battles he'd fought earlier, the times he had held back, suddenly stung like betrayal. The machete slashed past his face and dented the tile. Shards of ceramic sprayed into the air, dust and grit choking the light. Matt sprung back, out of the stall, out into the corridor, and squared himself against the monstrous figure. This time, hesitance wasn't an option. If letting another life be taken was what it would cost, then he would not hold back. He lashed out. The staff clipped the machete, a sharp metallic ring, and for the first time the blade's arc deviated. Using the opening, Matt split his staff into two shorter sticks, slipped around the man's flank, and unleashed a storm of strikes. Stick shadows fell like rain on the triangle-headed man, punishing and precise. Nearby, Dr. Kurt Connors, the lizard, watched with narrowed, reptilian eyes. He'd been poised to withdraw, to let the two humans wear each other down and then finish the survivors. Instead, he found himself unable to look away. Did he hold back earlier? The lizard wondered. That human is not ordinary. Maybe he can actually kill the monster. His forked tongue flicked out and back, tasting the air. Whether human or monster, they all had to die in his plan. He stayed, waiting for the result, and for a little while that intent kept him there. More figures poured into the corridor. SHIELD agents, Hill and the others, pushing through a tangle of bodies and debris. Several agents were missing or already dead. Those present looked battered and hollow-eyed. Fury limped in, bruised and worse for wear, having fought his way through the strange creatures to get there. He scanned the scene, then froze at an absence. "Where's Natasha?" he demanded. "You mean the woman in the black suit?" someone asked. Dr. Lizard grinned, teeth glinting. "Unfortunately, she died, killed by a monster." The way the words fell into the corridor, flat, terrible, sent a cold wave through the assembled faces. Shock, denial, sudden, sharp grief. Fury's jaw tightened until the cords in his neck stood out like ropes. "Natasha is dead?" someone whispered. Fury's voice was cold and hard when he spoke. "Everyone, kill this lizard man." For a moment, the corridor was silent, the command hanging like a thrown gauntlet. Dr. Lizard's grin faltered, then curled upward in amusement, and a dangerous glint of curiosity as he took in Fury's order. Chapter 53, Dr. Lizard's Frustration. "Why me?" Dr. Lizard muttered, staring at Fury in bewilderment. He hadn't done anything yet. Why was he the one being singled out? Shouldn't Fury be dealing with the creature that was locked in combat with Matt? The lizard man's cold voice carried a hint of insolence. "Hey, black salted egg, if you want to die, I wouldn't mind teaming up with the monsters to send you off." Fury didn't flinch. He had scanned the scene as he arrived and seen that Matt was locked in close quarters with the monstrous, iron-headed figure. Matt's life didn't appear to be in immediate danger. There was a third element on the field besides them and the monsters, a talking lizard man who'd been gloating over Natasha's death. That made him a liability. Better to neutralize him now than let him cause more trouble later. The agents around Fury understood and closed in on Dr. Lizard. "Ugly reptile," Fury barked an ultimatum. "Join us in attacking the monsters if you value your skin. Otherwise, you die here." Dr. Lizard sneered. "You really think you can beat me?" That question stung. Hill, who had just learned of Natasha's death and felt something hot and furious ignite in his chest, snapped. He raised his gun and emptied magazine after magazine into the lizard man. Over a dozen rounds pinged and sparked off armored scales. "Doctor," Lizard tossed his arms up to shield his eyes. "Human weapons are toys to me," he snarled, about to spit more taunts. Instead, a pistol flew through the air and struck him square on the forehead. Hill followed with a full-force kick that whistled through the air. The lizard man staggered, eyes wide, and brought his arms up to block, only to have Hill's momentum carry him forward. At the same moment, Agent May slipped in behind him, grabbed the restless tail with both hands, heaved, and used the leverage to swing Dr. Lizard, who tipped the scales well over 300 kilograms, and slam him into the pavement. Hill vaulted up from the low wall, rolled through the air, and drove the sole of his boot down onto Dr. Lizard's head, grinding him into the ground with a merciless, furious intensity. The whole assault, from threat to the lizard man lying flattened, lasted less than 5 seconds. Fury and Coulson felt their jaws tighten. They both read the expression on the other's face. Those were not the gestures of disciplined agents. "Have Hill and May ever been that violent before?" Coulson asked, stunned. "No," Fury replied grimly. Their composure had shattered. Fury's immediate thought went to the superhuman serum program. Loss of emotional control was exactly the kind of side effect that would be terrifying. He recognized the danger, but this wasn't the time to deal with it. He barked, "Enough, Hill. May." The command brought the two back, but Dr. Lizard was already regaining his footing, his cheeks scraping the pavement. Shame and humiliation flooded him. In a sudden, furious surge, he shoved Hill and May aside, scrambled to his feet, glared at Fury and the others, and bolted. Guns cracked in reflexive pursuit, but the lizard man powered through the encirclement and vanished into the darkness. "Don't chase him," Fury ordered. He needed their obedience, and he needed them controlled. When Hill and the others obeyed, Fury allowed himself a short, tense breath. Better to let the reptile live than risk losing control entirely and being picked off here. From the shadows, Dr. Lizard unleashed a string of angry roars. He was supposed to be noble, one of the lizard men elite, but he'd been frightened off by a monster, humiliated by humans, and finally slammed face first into the ground. Rage and humiliation snapped in his throat. "Damn it! How can there be so many powerful humans? How can the lizardmen rule the world like this?" He ground his teeth. He wouldn't be able to handle this alone. If he was to succeed, he'd have to create more of his kind. To do that, though, he had to leave this hell alive, and hope the humans finished off the monsters so he could slip away and work in secret. Swearing furiously, he melted into the night. Freed from the shackles of prudence, Matt suddenly felt revitalized. He was acutely aware now, the monster, the agents, the heartbeat and movements of everyone nearby, but he no longer had to hold himself back. He could fight with everything he had. Still, a question burned in him. Why couldn't he kill the Triangle Ironhead? No matter how he struck, the triangular, iron-helmeted attacker would not fall. Matt's face twisted with frustration. He slammed the short baton again and again into the bare back of the iron-headed figure, each blow leaving a small dent in the armored plating, but the attacker's motions barely changed. The armored man crouched lightly and answered with a horizontal swing of the machete that smashed through bathroom door frames and wall studs, shaving inches from the ceiling and nearly nicking Matt's scalp before the blade tore into the opposite wall and punched a ragged gap. The spear in the man's other hand whipped out like lightning. Matt leaned aside at the last moment. The spear drove into the tiled floor with a sickening crack and left an even larger hole. In minutes, they demolished more than half the bathroom, more effective than most demolition crews. And it was the Triangle Ironhead who was doing most of the work. Matt inhaled raggedly. No matter what he tried, this enemy held fast. Rage bubbled to the surface, and he snarled, "You bastard! Just die!" The Ironhead pivoted, turned its back toward Matt, and pointed the machete and spear menacingly at the advancing agents, Hill and May. With unstable elements cleared from the immediate fight, Fury had ordered S.H.I.E.L.D. to engage the Triangle Ironhead directly. He wanted a victory, to prove that S.H.I.E.L.D. still had control in the face of these strange, escalating threats. Rescuing Natasha had been the pretext to mobilize more agents. Now Fury wanted results. "Go on," he told the agents tensely. "The future's in your hands." But the Triangle Ironhead would not make it easy. It lifted its head and crossed the machete and spear, delivering an impending, brutal strike. A faint sound rippled through the darkness. Fury's eyes flicked to the shadowed flanks of the ruined room, and he realized a dozen dark silhouettes were moving there, too many to be expected. One of them slid forward differently than the others. Coulson, looking straight at the figure standing at the center of that strange light, felt his breath catch, and his voice broke out in a shout he had not meant to make. "Natasha?" Chapter 54, Breaking the Queen. In the middle of the chaos, Natasha, who everyone had thought dead, suddenly appeared among them. Fury stared into her lifeless eyes and shook his head. She's not Natasha anymore. Don't hesitate. We have to stop them all. Coulson ground his teeth and nodded. He plugged the remaining agents into a defensive line and kept up suppressing fire against the creatures. The barrage kept most of them at bay. Only a few made it close before being knocked back. For the moment they were holding. But ammunition was finite, and even when a creature's limb or head was smashed, it kept moving. Only by completely destroying their joints could they slow them down. Worse still, Natasha stood behind the monsters, watching them hungrily and not yet acting. "Chief, we can't hold much longer," Coulson called. "I know." Fury looked toward Hill and the two who had gone with him. They were locked in a tight battle with the triangular iron-headed creature, but the cramped space made dodging nearly impossible, not even as easy as when Matt had fought alone. "No, we need to move to another battlefield, somewhere wide, with a door," Fury barked. "I know where to go," Hill replied. He rolled to a clearer side, avoided the machete swing, and shouted to Agent May and Matt, "Follow me." May didn't hesitate. Matt paused only a moment before running after them. The triangle-headed monster hesitated, glanced at Fury, then turned and chased Hill and the others. Fury exhaled for the first time in a while. When the creature faced away, the air around him thickened, making it hard to breathe for a second before the feeling passed. He waved everyone onward. "Let's follow slowly. Watch for more monsters." "Yes!" They fell back, still firing to suppress anything that came close. Natasha, who had been standing blankly, moved with sudden speed. She darted like a rabbit among the hulking figures and lobbed two round objects ahead of their line. "Smokes! Watch out!" she called. Two soft bangs and thick smoke rolled in, swallowing Fury and his team. To avoid friendly fire, they cut the shooting immediately. Natasha plunged into the smoke with a mask-like calm, thumbed out a dagger, and lunged for the nearest agent. A metal arm shot through the smoke and clamped onto her wrist. Bucky's face was steady. "Go, I'll cover you," he said. "Sergeant Bucky." Coulson's voice strangled with dread. He knew what covering the escape meant. It could cost whoever stayed behind their life. Fury looked at Bucky with pain, then ordered, "Coulson, move! No time to hesitate." Monsters were closing fast. Coulson understood. If the creatures broke through the line, they'd wipe the whole team out. He whispered, "Take care," and moved with the retreating group without looking back. Bucky shoved Natasha away and brought both fists up, trying to hold the line. More monsters poured past him, chasing Fury's retreating squad. In the distance, bursts of gunfire marked their path. Bucky watched Natasha reappear and, with a forced smile, muttered, "Fine. I could go at this all day." Natasha, uncowed, produced a small green vial and injected herself. Bucky frowned. Whatever she'd just taken made the situation worse. The team had no time to analyze it. The Stranges had returned, and they were pushing them back into combat posture. After a short, brutal fighting retreat, Fury heard Hill's battle anew farther ahead and led his people toward it. They pushed through a small doorway and emerged into Eshield's underground parking garage. The space opened into a cavernous lot crowded with rusting, discarded vehicles. A moth-eaten fighter jet sat at the far end, clearly ornamental and in no condition to fly. Hill and his companions had dragged the triangle-headed creature here. Their fierce fighting had wrecked cars and cleared a large space. In this open area, they had far more room to dodge. Fury felt a relief he hadn't allowed himself before. "Guard the door," he ordered. "Keep them from following." With the terrain advantage, holding a choke point would be much easier. Fury figured they could buy at least 10 minutes. He watched the fight unfold across the lot, and then his worry hardened. They were badly underarmed. Matt only had a long stick. Hill and May were down to daggers. Those weapons barely scratched the creature, and whatever damage they inflicted healed fast. The creature's blows, on the other hand, could maim or kill in an instant. It was a lopsided match. "Hill, grab his weapon," Fury snapped. Hill's eyes lit up. The triangle-headed thing was still gripping a machete. He surged forward and yanked at the creature's right arm. May reacted instantly, clamping down on the monster's left hand. "Matt!" she called. Matt understood. He lunged in, levering at the iron fingers that wrapped the machete. They strained together, 1, 2, 3, muscles burning, and finally the grip slipped. Matt snatched the machete free. It felt heavy in his hands, the true weight of a blunt instrument meant to chop through bone. "So that's what you've been fighting us with," Matt said, incredulous. He lifted the machete and channeled everything into one brutal downward swing. "Then die," he vowed, and brought the blade down. The machete split the triangular-headed creature clean in two. For a breath there was triumph, and then a foul, black gas poured from the severed body like smoke from a ruptured pipe. It spilled across the concrete and swallowed everything in its path. Fury's agents, Bucky, who had been wrestling with Natasha, Dr. Lizard, hiding in the distance, all were swept up by the inky cloud. The garage filled with it, and the world went dark. Chapter 55, Resurrection. Where am I? Am I dead? Bucky stumbled through impenetrable blackness, arms folded across his chest, face lost in confusion. He wasn't the promising, steady-handed sergeant anymore. He felt like a broken thing, helpless and abandoned. He staggered through that lonely void, certain everyone had left him behind. A sudden, piercing light flared up ahead. Bucky shielded his eyes and squinted. In the brightness stood a figure he knew too well. Steve? For the first time in decades, an almost childlike smile lit the old man's face. Bucky lunged forward, as if reunited with a long-lost friend, his gaze snagging on the familiar star-spangled shield. Tears welled in his eyes. "Steve, my brother, I finally see you again." But the welcome vanished as fast as it had come. Cold water seemed to drop into his chest. A pain like knives slashed through him. The voice that answered was not kind. "Brother, I don't have a brother who could do what's in your hands. Look at your hands. How many sins do they carry?" Bucky glanced down. His hands were dark with sticky blood. The world had gone red. He shook his head fiercely. No, I didn't. It wasn't me." "Really?" Memory fragments he had buried deep exploded free. Horrifying, terribly familiar scenes surged up. Women, the old, children, fellow agents, officials, engineers, all cut down by the muzzle of his gun or throttled by his metal arm. Images rolled and overlapped until Bucky could barely breathe. "No, this can't be true." He crumpled to the ground and clutched his skull, refusing to accept the evidence of his own hands. The figure in the light pronounced one final verdict. "Bucky, you executioner, go to hell." The figure turned and retreated, and the light that had felt like warmth winked out. "No, don't leave me, Steve." Bucky cried as the vision faded into nothing. Meanwhile, in the real world, Nick Fury prowled through darkness with a pistol clenched in his hand, every nerve taut. He'd been scraping through the underground parking area, looking for survivors. He still remembered Matt cutting one of the triangle ironheads clean in half with a machete, and yet here he was, waking into a nightmare he couldn't trust. The pistol in his fist was a sliver of comfort. At least he still had that. Shadows gathered from the gloom and became faces. Men, women, old and young, contorted, bleeding from bullet wounds, some with black fluid seeping from their orifices, shifted into view. Fury watched them with a mixture of disgust and thin amusement. "What, you're here to tally up your hero points?" he sneered. "I could have killed you then. I could kill you now." From the darkness, a man in a security uniform rasped, "Oh, it's you, boss." Fury only shrugged, keeping his anger carefully varnished. "I've already apologized. What more do you want? You don't seriously expect me to pay with my life? Try not to be so dramatic. I can, at most, leave your family a small pension, 1,000, no more." He'd always been the king of hard choices and harder faces. Dead people, real dead people, were not supposed to frighten him. Then a sound cut through the ranks of voices, a faint mewling. An ordinary orange cat padded out of the shadows. Fury blinked. "Impossible," he said out loud. "You shouldn't be here. Unless it's all an illusion." He felt the thought like a lifeline. The cat cocked its head and looked at him with tiny, familiar eyes. Fury tightened his grip on the pistol, preparing to pull the trigger. Then something utterly wrong happened. The cat opened its mouth, and a cluster of thick, mucus-slick tentacles shot out, lashing over Fury's limbs and torso and lifting him off his feet. "It is a yuan-devouring beast," Fury hissed as the thing sealed him in its grip. Even restrained, Fury's sneer didn't vanish. He spat through clenched teeth. "Too bad. The yuan-devouring beasts I know are gone from Earth. You're a fake." The cat, if it was a cat, didn't take the mockery well. One tentacle thrust forward and pierced straight through his chest. Fury tasted warm blood and coughed it out. pain blooming sharp and immediate, but his eyes stayed cold and flat. "Useless," he muttered. "It's all an illusion. You're not even good at this." He closed his eyes, counting breaths as he always had. When he opened them, the dark theater of the hallucination had vanished. He was back in the underground parking lot, chaos and human noise washing over him. Groans and screams, bodies curled on the cold concrete. Fury took a long breath and scanned the scene. Everyone else, Coulson, Hill, May, Matt, lay there, eyes closed, faces frozen in fear or sorrow. It was clear they were trapped in the same illusion he had just escaped. Fury was the only one awake. He hurried to Coulson and shook him hard. "Hey, Coulson, wake up. That's not real." Coulson did not open his eyes. His brows drew together and he murmured, barely audible, "Lola, I'm sorry. If it weren't for me, Barton." "Jesus, not this." Fury snapped under his breath. Of course Coulson was still haunted by Hawkeye. Fury had heard the man shoulder guilt in a dozen different ways. It made him grind his teeth. He moved to rouse the others. A shriek shredded the air. Fury turned toward the sound and saw, to his horror, an officer whose head had suddenly been sheathed in a triangular iron helmet. Clothing split as the man's body twisted and swelled, limbs elongating, bone and flesh rearranging, and in seconds the man was a triangle ironhead. Fury's control snapped. "Fuck you," he swore. These things were nightmares with teeth. They were hard enough to kill, and when destroyed, they could possess new bodies in return. The knowledge settled on him like a lead weight. This wasn't a fight he wanted to waste himself on until the last breath. He had to get the living out. Seeing that one of the monsters had already resurrected through a new host, Fury took a breath and bolted toward Hill, intent on dragging her away from the danger. Behind him, the newly born triangle ironhead glanced down at its right hand, empty, then up to the machete clenched in Matt's grip. The creature's head turned to follow the blade. It planted a foot and stepped forward, moving with a speed that was, alarmingly, faster than before. Chapter 56, Cosmic Rubik's Cube. In the underground parking garage, Fury poured every ounce of energy into his sprint and reached Hill before the triangular iron-headed man could. Hill ripped off her tactical pack and produced a small iron case. A grave look crossed Fury's face as she opened it. Bright blue beams erupted from the seam, painting Fury's weathered features a wavering sea blue. Inside sat the cosmic cube. More than 50 years ago, it had been in Hydra's hands and had been used to develop weapons. Fury knew that those were only a fraction of its power. Over 20 years earlier, he had lived through an event that changed him forever and met the strongest human he'd ever seen, an entity far beyond the Homelander, the world obsessed over now. She had single-handedly annihilated a fleet of space battleships. Her power had come from the cosmic cube. Fury had finally recovered the Tesseract with the help of metamorphosis, but wary of the danger it posed, he'd studied it only briefly and locked it away in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s vault. Now, facing this god of punishment, he'd brought it out again and handed it to Hill as insurance. Use it only at the decisive moment. The moment had come. Fury lifted the cosmic cube, turned to the triangular iron-headed man advancing toward them, and slammed it to the concrete. He didn't fully understand the cube's mechanics, but earlier experiments had shown that violent shocks could trigger its energy. If brute force could coax out a miracle, he would try it. The cube crashed down and detonated a wave of power. The blast shoved Fury and the others off their feet and even staggered the iron-headed figure. Everything the wave passed over shimmered, like a mirage lifting. The sterile white floor, the gleaming new cars, some overlay peeled away to reveal something more familiar beneath. "That's the real world," Fury said from where he'd landed, a grim smile breaking across his face. He had gambled right. Dozens of kilometers away, in an apartment, Levi accepted an apple from Tom and took a bite, raising an eyebrow. "So that backpack really had the cosmic cube in it?" "Black salted eggs got guts. He's not afraid of losing both his wife and his army." Levi already knew what the space gem within the cube meant. The space stone was one of the 6 infinity gems, and it could negate the triangular man's field expansion ability. The show Fury had staged was about to reach its finale. Levi checked his console. Reputation, 99,643. After a string of strange events and the spread of Norman's notoriety, minus the points he'd spent buying abilities, Levi's reputation was on the cusp of breaking the 100,000 mark and unlocking his fourth talent. The space stone itself was of no use to him right now. Better to leave it with S-Shield for the moment. It would be his sooner or later. Under the cube's influence, the area around the S-Shield base kept clarifying. The triangular iron-headed man's form thinned and faded until he seemed to dissolve. Fury breathed a small, private relief until the cube shuddered again and a column of prismatic light shot upward. It bathed Fury briefly in rainbow hues, then Hill was gone. "Director!" someone shouted. Hill, groggy, lunged to shove Fury aside but was caught in the light. The beam rose into the night, and when it vanished, she had disappeared. "Maria!" Fury yelled, but there was no answer. Weary, he crossed to the still quivering cube, closed the iron case, and sealed it away. One by one the survivors, Coulson among them, stirred awake, blinking as if after a long nightmare. They looked around at the recovered, ordinary world with stunned relief. "Sir, is the triangular iron-headed man neutralized?" Coulson asked. Fury looked past him, eyes tightening. Coulson followed that gaze and felt his stomach drop. The iron-headed figure had reappeared, the space around him swarming with strange companions. One of those figures bore a familiar face that made Coulson clench his fists. Natasha. The triangular man paused and stared at Fury and Coulson for a long moment, then turned and walked away. The strange cohort, including Natasha, followed. Within seconds, they had vanished. "Where'd they go?" Coulson asked. "I don't know," Fury said. "Maybe another exclusion zone just opened somewhere in New York." Fury's jaw tightened. The operation had failed. They hadn't stopped the triangular man. Worse, they'd lost two of their best, Natasha and Maria Hill. S-Child was already short-handed. They needed capable people more than ever. He glanced down at Matt, who was still sitting on the floor in a daze, and walked over. "Matt, after what you've seen, you know this world isn't as safe as you thought. People are in danger. S-Shield needs you." Matt didn't speak at first. Then he looked up slowly. "I'll help," he said, "but I have two conditions. 1, Hell's Kitchen stays under my control. No S-Shield interference. 2, I need a very, very sharp knife." Fury blinked, then after a beat, nodded. "Granted. Welcome to the Avengers." "The Avengers," Matt echoed. After Fury and the others left to regroup, Matt rubbed the palm of his right hand and noticed a raised mark had appeared there, a scarlet line shaped oddly like the blade he'd taken with him. He smiled, a hard, satisfied grin. "Is this fate?" he murmured. "Then there's no more hesitation." Somewhere else, Dr. Connors, the lizard, found himself back in the real world. Before S-Shield could respond, he fled into the sewers, slithering away to continue building his lizard kingdom. "Just wait," he hissed. "Damn humans, the world belongs to the lizard people." The operation had bought them something, enough to reveal the true plane and to keep the threat at bay for a moment, but at a steep cost. Fury closed his jaw, thinking of Maria, Natasha, and the coming days. New enemies had shown their hands. S-Shield would need every ally it could find. Chapter 57, The Fourth Talent. The security cell smelled faintly of rot. Owen, the guard who'd carried the title of Firebearer, had long since gone cold. His skin was shriveled and gray, as if every drop of blood had been pulled from him. Coulson covered his nose and stepped closer, glancing at Owen's palm. He straightened and reported, "Director, the mark on his hand is gone." "Just as I suspected." Fury's voice was low and heavy. Owen was only the medium, the conduit, for the triangular iron head to enter our world. After an event like this, that thing could grow stronger. It may no longer need a human vessel. It could actively seek out a new medium and trigger another catastrophe. Coulson thought of the figures who had fled with the creatures, including Natasha. He said, alarmed, "If we leave it be, won't it keep producing more monsters? What happens to America? It becomes a wasteland." Fury finished grimly. "No people left, only monsters." He turned and left the holding room, adding over his shoulder, "We must eliminate it completely before it becomes unstoppable." There was one slim consolation. The cosmic cube had an effect on the triangular iron head. It could repel it, but not destroy it. That meant S-Shield needed to focus on redeveloping and studying the cube. Fury cursed under his breath at the memory of how long the device had sat gathering dust in a warehouse. When an ultimate weapon appears, you don't bury it, you master it. Coulson caught up to him in the corridor. "Director, Shall we activate the Avengers project? Fury didn't hesitate. Yes, the human wave tactics are dead. We need a compact elite unit, 5 or 6 people. Not a crowd, but individuals who can handle extreme danger, who can be tested and trusted, and who are willing to make real sacrifices. He looked at his team and continued, S-Shield resources will be redirected to support them fully. So far, I've invited Matt Murdock. His actions in this crisis stood out. My only reservation is the superhuman serum. There may be long-term personality changes. Both of them had noticed the same thing in Agents Hill and May. The serum made people shorter-tempered, prone to sudden violence. May had already been sent for psychiatric evaluation. The remainder of the serum was secured for deep analysis. Coulson nodded. I'll arrange a full evaluation for Matt. I'd also like to recommend someone else. Sergeant Barnes? Fury guessed. Yes. Good candidate, but he's injured right now, and we still don't know what happened to him in those missing decades. Leave that to me. Fury clapped Coulson on the shoulder. He didn't bring up Hawkeye. He trusted Coulson to handle his own personal problems. Right, Fury said. We'll handle the rest. Across town in an apartment where ordinary life tried to persist, Jerry scrubbed dishes while Tom fussed over a tray. Levi leaned back in his chair and watched, content. It was a domestic scene of small happiness that felt fragile against the storm S-Shield feared. Fury's warnings had been accurate. The triangular iron head would not stop. It would continue to move and create new aberrations, stoking fear and building a reputation for terror. That reach, the way a single monstrous tale can spread, was what mattered. The entity's creator, Norman, hadn't acted at random. He had larger plans, recruiting more servants, assembling strength, and then taking the campaign beyond Earth. Better to expand his influence now than wait for Thanos to come knocking, Norman must have thought. Reputation was currency, and the cosmos was rich with ears. Levi chuckled and glanced at the translucent panel hovering before him. Reputation, 100,047. The talent list scrolled into view. 1. Strange body. Ability to transform into an alien form. Only supernatural forces can harm it. 2. Worship of the dark gods. The more people know of you, the stronger you become. 3. Bestowal. Spend reputation to grant abilities to others, even control their life and death, and access those abilities yourself. 4. Void creation. Create artifacts with supernatural effects at the cost of reputation points. 5. Locked. Unlocks at 10,000 reputation. Levi whistled softly. Just the 4th talent alone lets me fabricate things from nothing? That's absurd. He didn't yet know how his power stacked against the greats, Thor, the Ancient One, Odin, but he suspected he could handle most threats with a casual gesture. If those cosmic elders stayed out of his way, he'd be content to keep his distance. In a year or two, he'd likely stop worrying about them altogether. The 5th talent, though, required 10 million reputation points to unlock, another level entirely. Fortunately, there were plenty of heroes in the world to keep things interesting. He snapped his fingers and the void creation ability rippled into action. On his palms appeared a small, black-covered book, a fruit with an impossible shape, a hideous mask, and a plain bottle that looked like any old drink. He smiled. Next step, find someone who's meant to be with you. Meanwhile, Eddie had been riding a streak of success. His investigative work had catapulted him to fame, and admirers pursued him constantly. That night, he'd slipped away from a crowd of hopefuls and wandered out of a bar, bleary-eyed and smiling. Looking for something to sobriety him up, he staggered toward a vending machine tucked in a dim alley. The machine's interior held odd things. Most looked like novelties. Only one item seemed like a drink. A small label blinked, 10. Eddie blinked back, tipsy. $10? That's steep, but I can spare it. He fed coins into the slot, pressed the button, and didn't notice the small print beneath the item. He didn't read the fine print that said the price wasn't a dollar amount at all, but a life price, 10 years. The mechanism clicked. The cartridge dropped. He picked the bottle up and read its label aloud. Assassin's Potion? Huh, weird name. He popped the cap and, without another thought, gulped it all down. The bottle was empty before he had time to register regret. Chapter 58. Rebellion against Tiangang. After quickly tying up the business at the New York branch, Fury handed the remaining matters to Coulson and returned to S-Shield headquarters in Washington, to deal with more pressing official business. The whole incident had made a splash. People would have heard about it, and he needed to be careful about how he filed his report. If only Hill were here. She always handled this sort of thing with ease. Who would replace her? Fury walked toward his office, lost in thought. When he reached for the door handle, he paused, frowned, slipped his right hand behind his back and palmed his pistol. He eased the door open, stepped inside, and trained the barrel on a dark shape in the room. Finally, came a very familiar voice. "I've been waiting up most of the night." Fury relaxed his grip a fraction, flipped on the light, and found himself looking at Tony Stark in red and gold armor, nonchalantly chewing a hamburger. "Tony Stark? What are you doing here?" Fury blinked. In Fury's mind, Tony belonged at home or out carousing, not sitting in the director's chair in a powered suit. Tony shoved the rest of the burger into his mouth, chewed huge mouthfuls, licked the dressing off his fingers, and grinned. "Of course I'm here for you," Tony said. "You're Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Tsk. You're even grimmer in person than in your photos." "How did you find S.H.I.E.L.D.?" Fury demanded, eyes narrowing. Suddenly he realized the S.H.I.E.L.D. database had been breached recently. You were the one who attacked the database. Bingo. Tony crossed one leg over the other, still chewing. "Your network's rubbish. It hasn't been updated in ages. Put the gun away. Don't shoot a wall by accident." Fury's expression darkened. He holstered the pistol. S.H.I.E.L.D. upgrades its network every month. "Then fire whoever runs it," Tony said casually. "I'll overhaul your firewall. After I'm done, no one gets in." Fury ignored the offer and walked to his desk, resting both hands on it and looking down at Tony. "Put yourself together first. You know that breaking into S.H.I.E.L.D. without authorization is arrestable. Espionage, sabotage. I could have you locked up." Tony was not the sort to be intimidated. He smirked. "Enough with the threats. Let's be direct. I'm here to cooperate." "With what?" Fury asked. "About the Avengers." The name made Fury's pupils shrink. He stared at Tony. Tony, unruffled, continued. "I know a lot of what S.H.I.E.L.D. thinks it keeps secret. I know what's hiding in the dark corners of this glamorous world. The man in the mirror, the Headless Horseman, the Faceless Man, the Firebringer. You can't handle any of those. You need my help." "You? Help?" Fury scoffed. "These aren't things you can fix with tech. Looks like your intelligence is a bit out of touch." Tony tapped the armor. "I'm not a playboy anymore. I'm Iron Man." Fury looked him over, annoyed at his own intelligence team for missing this. "You can join the Avengers," he said slowly, "but you will not lead them." Tony's smile dropped. "You think someone's a better choice than me? Are you kidding?" Fury's face remained unreadable. The two men locked eyes. Neither yielded. Each knew the other was stubborn as a rock. "Fine," Tony said at last, getting to his feet. "You'll regret this, Nick Fury." He let his mask drop into place. The suit's eye slits glowed orange. Jets flared beneath his boots, and out of his palms. He shot up, smashed a pane of the floor-to-ceiling window, and streaked into the night sky. Fury watched the broken glass fall, then waved a dismissive hand to any staff who might have heard the commotion and appeared. His face was a dark lake. This shouldn't have gone so far. If Tony were to be part of the team, Fury thought, it should have been on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s terms, invited, vetted, controlled. But Tony's powered suit made Fury realize that the old controls no longer applied. This former playboy had become a very real, very dangerous power without S.H.I.E.L.D.'s consent. Fury would not let an unstable wildcard dictate the Avengers. "The Avengers," he muttered to himself, "are S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Avengers." Alone in the night, Tony's glare softened as he climbed into the sky. "Damn him," he told the wind. "No one rejects Tony Stark." As the adrenaline faded, a different, colder calculation took shape. Maybe things would be better if he did this without Fury. That man looked like a control freak. He'd likely try to turn Tony into an asset and then sell him out. New plan. Tony would build his own team. His first recruit was obvious, Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, who had his own suit and could match him blow for blow. Who else? Tony glanced over a mental list. Happy Hogan? That would be asking too much. Or why not create dozens of suits and let Jarvis fly them? An army of Iron Men. He laughed to himself. Of course, he had the money, the tech, the ego. "I'm a genius," he said aloud. As he banked over the city, Tony already began sketching designs in his head, Multiple suits, Jarvis in charge, an unstoppable Iron Legion. When the time came and the monsters showed themselves, thousands of armored figures would answer the call. Invincible. And if Fury wanted to mock him for it, so be it. Tony had ways of proving people wrong. Chapter 59. Wine. Bucky lay on the bed in the bright room, eyes open and fixed on the unfamiliar ceiling, lost in a fog of thought. He'd been like that for a long while when 3 soft knocks sounded at the door. A few seconds later, Coulson pushed it open. Seeing Bucky unresponsive, he pursed his lips into a small smile. "I was passing by and saw the light," he said. "Thought I'd check on you. Figured you might not be able to sleep, so I brought a bottle." He settled a chair beside the bed and handed the bottle to Bucky. "Vodka. It's strong, easy to get drunk on." Bucky's eyes flickered for the first time. He turned his head toward the bottle, sat up slowly, and took it in both hands. His lips were dry and trembled when he spoke. "I haven't had a drink in a long, long time." "Then drink," Coulson urged gently. "To hell with the past. Come on, cheers." Coulson raised his own beer, took a couple of long swallows, and set it down, shooting Bucky a knowing look. Bucky rubbed the bottle and, with his metal arm, unscrewed the cap easily. The sharp, familiar smell hit him. His throat moved on reflex. He hesitated, then tipped the bottle, closed his eyes, and let the high-proof liquor burn its way down. It made him cough, hard, before he could stop himself. "Slowly," Coulson said, amused. "It'll hit you." Bucky recovered and nodded. "It's damn strong. Feels right." He took another sip. A soft, hazy smile crossed his face. "I used to like hard liquor," he said. "Nobody could handle me when I drank. Steve couldn't. He was always so skinny, and hell, people treated him like a kid and kicked him out of bars." He laughed, a short, rueful sound. "Once I stole a bottle from my father's stash and invited Steve over. He took 2 sips and his face went bright red. He passed out. I laughed about that for days." Coulson listened, sipping his beer, watching the old friendship, so clearly still alive in memory, settle across Bucky's features like a blanket. That kind of bond is rare, he thought, and he could see why it hurt Bucky so much. Then the mood shifted. Bucky's smile curdled into something raw. Tears glinted in his reddened eyes. "I'm not worthy to stand by Steve anymore," he said, voice breaking. "I should have fallen off a cliff and died. Why did I have to survive? Why did they let me be captured by Hydra and turned into a killing machine that only knows how to kill? I'm not a hero anymore," he went on, each word like a blow. "I'm an executioner, an animal. I deserve to go to hell." From the clipped fragments Bucky offered, Coulson put the pieces together. Decades of stolen time, brainwashing, missions carried out under compulsion. The Osborn building incident. Bucky had been ordered to steal the super soldier serum from Natasha. The armed team that stormed the place, Coulson realized, had been Hydra. Hydra should have been gone. How had they survived, let alone reach back into the present? A conspiracy was hidden in this, and Fury would need to know. But for now, there was a man in front of him who was still drowning in guilt. "Bucky," Coulson said softly, taking hold of his shoulders and forcing him to meet his eyes. "Are you going to let this be the end of you? Are you going to accept that executioner label forever? Or are you going to use whatever time you have left to change that? Be the man people can call a hero again?" "The past can't be rewritten," Coulson pressed on. "But you can choose what comes next. Think about it. If Steve were here, what would he say?" Bucky blinked, as if the question had scraped through the fog. His eyes brightened a little. "He would pat my shoulder and tell me to follow him." "Exactly," Coulson said. "Captain America doesn't give up on his people." Bucky shook his head, doubt obvious on his face. "No, if I go near Hydra, they'll take me again. I can't fight it." Coulson gave him a steady, reassuring look. "You won't be alone. S-Shield will handle this. We won't let Hydra control you again. For now, stay here. We'll protect you." Bucky held Coulson's gaze for a long beat, then let out a small, weary breath and nodded. "Okay." The next morning, Eddie woke up gasping. He blinked through the haze, disentangled himself from a tangle of limbs and sheets, and stumbled to the bathroom on unsteady legs. He turned on the faucet and splashed his face with hot water until his vision cleared. He shivered, pulled on his pants, washed his hands, and padded back into the room. The sight of the bed, strewn with the aftermath of last night's revelry, brought confusion rushing back, then questions. He tried to remember how he'd ended up here. Nothing solid came. He went to wake one of the women still dozing and asked, "What happened last night? I don't remember a thing." Her smile was bright and unembarrassed. "You did a lot?" "I did all this?" He fumbled for reassurance, certain he should be able to judge his own actions. 10 years ago, he might have been proud, but at his age, this was impossible. "Who else would have?" another woman answered cheerfully. His stomach dropped. He had a sudden, awful thought about a bottle he'd been handed last night, something with a ridiculous name. Assassin's Potion? Assassin's Elixir? He shivered as the memory surfaced, a strong, medicinal-smelling drink. He joked about it then, but what if? He bolted for the door. As soon as he started running, he noticed something was different. His body felt absurdly light. Where he used to get winded after a few steps, he now bounded forward like a man half his age. With an easy spring, he cleared a 3 or 4 meter distance in a single leap, barely changing his breathing. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with a breakfast cart pushed by a waiter. His pupils narrowed. On instinct, he grabbed the edge of the cart, vaulted over it, spun in midair, and landed with a practiced roll behind it, barely disturbing his balance. Eddie stared at his hands, disbelief and a flash of exhilaration washing over him. Whatever he'd drunk last night, it wasn't just booze. It had real effects, real physical enhancements. Assassin's Potion, no joke. He ran back to the bar where he'd been the night before to find the odd vending machine he'd remembered, the one that had dispensed that strange bottle. The machine was gone. Vanished. Broken. All he could think was that it had disappeared into thin air. For the first time since waking, he felt something like anticipation tighten his chest. Whatever had happened last night had changed him. He only hoped he could find out how and why before trouble did.